How are you?
Good. Sorry, let me put my volume up so I can hear you.
No
How's
problem.
everything going with you?
Oh, look, everything is pretty good right now. I mean, given the circumstances, we are in level 4 in New Zealand. So, long story short, like we can't leave home to go to the park or anything like that. We can literally just go to the supermarket,
Wow.
and at the supermarket, the line is like everyone's 2 meters apart from each other. There's
Sure.
lines down the road, but I mean, our prime minister, I think, did a really good job with that. And like it's good. It's a good system that we've got going here. When like I think about a couple of weeks ago, there was like 78 cases each day, and now it's
Wow.
down to about 28. So it's working. So hopefully we can leave soon because there's only so many times I can beat my brother in tennis. So
Well, it's good that you guys are at least able to hit. I mean,
yeah.
a lot of places they can't. How long have you guys been in this like lockdown?
So we have been in lockdown. That's a good question. I think it's coming up to about 2.5 weeks now. And
Yeah.
so I think they're going to make a decision around April 21st whether or not level 4 will be lifted or not. They're
Yeah.
also trying to figure out whether, schools will be reopened. Now, the word here is
Right.
that some of the schools for like high school and intermediate and primary school children are not going to open until September. And they're going to continue to do it online.
Yeah.
I think they're just really trying to crack down now hard early, so then obviously we can get out of it later on, as opposed to just sort of, giving up this process early and then something else happening down the road and then back to square one. So, yeah,
Sure.
not too sure. How's it where you guys are?
It's kind of similar to that. We've been doing the home work from home thing for this. I can't remember if it's the third week or the fourth week we've done this. So I actually think it's been 4 weeks. I think we were told one, two, three. This is the fourth week. So we almost finished 4 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
3.5 weeks, like you, it sounds like. So it's getting old, and
Yeah.
I think what's the biggest problem is, especially, I don't think people are used to having their whole family home, right?
Yeah.
The whole day. And like my daughter, school is now online, and luckily this is her, what we call spring break in America. So they get a whole week of no school.
Right.
But other than that, we were kind of having to help her with school and then keep her occupied. And then my wife is working full time
Yeah.
from home, and then I'm doing
Okay.
the same thing. So it's tough,
Yeah.
right? It's tough
Yeah.
to juggle everything, and I would say, things are probably starting to get back to normal a little bit.
Right.
But, first couple of weeks we were freaking out a little bit,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it sounds like with you guys too, things are getting better. It's getting better here.
Yeah, no, things are getting better. I
Yeah.
mean, we're just making do like the best we can with the situation, and we can still go for walks around the block and go
Sure,
for
we're
a
the
run,
same.
but
Yeah.
you just got to stay pretty, like whoever you live with, you got to stay close to them and
Correct.
you can't drift
Yeah.
off. But
Right.
I mean, being the older sibling in the family and then got a younger brother and younger sister,
Right.
sometimes it does have those battles. But I can tell you one
Sure.
thing. I haven't lost a board game since we've been in lockdown. And so
There you
still grinding through. My brother, I beat him in poker, beat him in
There you go.
articulate. So
That will, don't ever let them forget it,
yeah,
so.
definitely won't.
Sure, man.
So Chris, like last time we met would have been a few years ago when we
Yeah.
were in New York.
Yeah, it's probably been what is that? Maybe a year. Man, it's been 2 years or something like that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess so. We would have just been starting out at LSU. So,
Yes. Yes, that's right.
yeah, it's been, you didn't go back last year, right?
No.
Yeah. You just
No,
were there because your brother was playing, right?
that's right. Yeah. So I remember I had a coffee with you and we spoke a bit, and you're telling me about, you're going to be head coaching with your dad as well.
Yeah.
And, I thought this would be a good opportunity to have a chat with you and, learn a little bit more about the LSU program. Like since we last met, we've had the opportunity to work with a wide range of athletes from different countries.
Sure.
Like we've just got a new partnership with an academy in Queensland, Australia, which is arguably one of the most dominant academies there, and they produce an insane amount of athletes. So I thought it'd be good to get you on the camera, talk to you a bit about the LSU program, and find out about what recruits, etc., that you look for, and what sort of things you look for within that recruit, whether it's tennis or attitude. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about yourself and about how you got into tennis. I know that you competed in Davis Cup. You won some good matches there. Obviously, your dad is a very, very well-known coach in the college system and also in the world of tennis. But how did you get into it?
Well, I mean, naturally, like a lot of things people do, my family was a tennis family. Right. And my dad had played tennis and his brother had played tennis. And, that's all I ever knew as a little kid growing up, right? And my dad, as far as back as I can remember, was coaching. And when I was a little kid, was the women's head coach at the University of Florida. Yeah. And also was coaching a lot of professionals too. Yes. All throughout, the 80s and 90s when I was growing up. So I was around the game, right? And then I would go to little tennis camps kind of thing. And then naturally some of my friends played, and my mother even played and was a pretty good club level player. And then, just like anything else, once you start putting some time and effort, if you have a little bit of talent, you get better, and then you want to play more, right? Right. And, I got lucky with, obviously my dad was my coach and gave me some good instruction. So I had a good foundation. And even the town I grew up in, there was a fair amount of kids that ended up playing tennis in college at all kinds of different schools. So there were a lot of guys that I got to practice with as a young kid. And I got to see, a lot of college tennis, men's and women's, which was a lot of fun. And, naturally that was kind of a goal of mine, was to play at least the highest level in college tennis.
Right. That's fantastic. And I mean, you worked with yourself, like you mentioned your dad coached some professionals, but you've also worked with some professionals. You worked with Elena Dementieva. You also worked with Ryan, who won the Junior US Open. Talk to us a bit about that experience.
Well, that was when I was first starting out. I was probably more of a hitting partner with Elena, and she was my father and Harold Solomon were coaching her a little bit. Right. But there were other pros that I worked with, like Laura Granville, Ryan Sweeting when he was first starting out. I don't even know why I'm forgetting, but there was a fair amount of these people. And this was my first introduction to coaching after school. Yeah. And I even got to be a hitting partner for the Fed Cup. And so was around some good players then and great coaches. And, so I've always been lucky to be around great players, great coaches, and have always had the chance to learn from everybody. Right. And I've always been a big believer. You gotta find your own path, even if you've got mentors, and you got to see what works for you. And I've been lucky to be around some great coaches my whole life. And, but I think tennis, whether it's men's, women's, high performance, even just club level tennis, they're all equally difficult, and you got to find what works best for that player. And you got to have you've got to find a good personality mesh with that person. Right. Yes. And even though you may be a great coach, or there may be a great coach out there, that may not be the right coach for you. Right. So you've got to constantly be adapting and trying to figure out that player. And, it's a great profession. It changes all the time. And I'm lucky to do what I do with my dad every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you spent a lot of time in Florida. Did you ever work closely with guys like Nick Bollettieri?
So I didn't, but my dad did when he was first starting out coaching. He worked at the Bollettieri Tennis Academy in the early 80s. And this was when, this was the first academy of its kind in the world. And him and his brother, I think, were there, like I said, early 80s. And he worked with tons of great players when he was just starting out. And I never really spent time there much as a junior. I did go to the Saddlebrook Academy some when I was probably like 15, 16. And at that time, there were some great players and coaches there. And, so that Florida at the time was kind of the first place that had those academies, right? And now you see that model spread out around the world and different sports even, right? But tennis, and now IMG Academy is not just a tennis academy, right? Now it's every single sport.
Literally,
and, and it was started, I don't even know. Now it's been almost 40 years ago. down in Florida, and it's blossoming into something completely different. Yeah, I mean, what a great place to grow up, Florida, as a kid, especially at that time. Tennis was booming, and it was a great experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And funny, just to get a little bit of on a side rail over here. I met a guy last year in Fiji, and he works for the U.S. Embassy, and his name's Paul, and he actually played American football for LSU about 7 years ago. Yeah, so when I told him that I knew you, and he got absolutely pumped, and he looked after me. And that's the thing I like about college. Like, once you got a connection with the school, like, everyone looks after each other. Sure. And was that sort of why you wanted to get into college tennis, or what was your reason?
I think as a kid growing up, I was exposed to it probably more so than most people.
Yeah.
But, tennis is a unique sport in that you don't get that team aspect, right? And there might be, when you're a kid, you might join a team of some sort, or you might play in a team competition, but for the most part, you're on your own. And I did play other team sports growing up, and I enjoyed basketball and soccer and baseball and those sort of things. And, I think I really was drawn to college tennis, especially, and then I'm watching Davis Cup on TV, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, I loved college tennis as a kid. I loved looking at, when I was, let's say I was not even a teenager, I would go and watch these great teams play, men's and women's, and they were the people I looked up to, right, as athletes. So, naturally, that was just something I wanted to do. And then, of course, when you go play a tournament, even if it's a big tournament, yeah, you got people cheering for you, but it's really just your friends and family, right?
Totally.
But when you watch a Davis Cup or you watch a college tennis match, I mean, you got hundreds, maybe thousands of people rooting for you, right? And that's not an experience you usually get in tennis, unless you're one of the best in the world, right? So, even I saw your brother played at the U.S. Open, and I know that's a good experience, but there wasn't that many people rooting for him, right?
No.
It's just you guys and your family, and but when he goes and plays Davis Cup, it's a totally different deal, right? And I wanted to be a part of something like that, and that's what really motivated me, was to try to work hard and become a good enough player that I could play at a big school in college. That was my goal,
Yeah, totally. Like, you absolutely nailed it. I mean, I remember standing with you watching Ajit play, and the qualies at the US Open, and it was only college coaches trying to recruit someone.
And they weren't even in the main facility. They were in the outskirts, and they getting no love. And
exactly.
So it's I think personally the best experiences I've ever had in tennis are in college or in Davis Cup, which I played for a year, and that was just a tremendous experience. And because it's a team aspect, you get to play for something greater than yourself, and you even hear tons of great players on the tour. They love their time in playing for their country, or the players that played in college. I mean, they still speak fondly of that experience, and because tennis can be a lonely sport. And it's tough out there on your own, and you don't really. What's nice about college and all sports is you get a great team behind you, and not just your teammates, not just your coaches, but through the school, you're going to have great resources academically and from a physio standpoint, even mental health professionals that help you, doctors. It's a tremendous team behind you that probably only the best tennis players in the world have, right? You're talking the best 5 or 10 players have those kind of resources, right? Where they're traveling with trainers, traveling with coaches, traveling with, stringers, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And guys ranked 100 in the world, they don't get that. Girls ranked 50 in the world, they don't get that. They might have a coach, but, or they might share a coach, or they might share a trainer, but, it's not, it's difficult, right? And that's why I think college tennis especially is it's a great experience, number one, but it also helps you if that's what your ultimate aspirations are, is to play at the next level.
Oh, totally. And what you just said, I totally agree with, because I watch, obviously watching a lot of individual tournaments my brothers played. Like, I took him to Jakarta for a couple of futures, and we had 2.5 weeks there, and literally it was like me on the sideline watching him. No one else. Everyone's in the hotel
Yeah.
room, like on their phone, chilling out. And then they finish their match and they get off, and then they're done for the day. And then
Yeah.
I went and watched my brother play Davis Cup in Auckland, and one great role model for athletes is a guy in New Zealand named Finn Turney. He went to Pepperdine, did well. Now he's in New Zealand working in property development, but he's still playing some really good tennis.
Yeah, recently.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, so, he's playing in the New Zealand Davis Cup team, Finn, and, after a Jeep wins the first point, you see all the guys standing up clapping, and then I go inside to grab a beer during the match with my university friends, and there's guys by the bar like trying to grab their drinks and say, quickly, we've got to go support the boys. And my brother doesn't even know these guys, but they just come to support. Like that team environment is so attractive for athletes, and I'm totally on the same page with you, because tennis is a very lonely sport and financially stressful as well. And so
no doubt about it, man. I mean, no doubt about it. But,
So, I mean, now you're at LSU. Now there's not many athletes have had the opportunity to, go and visit the facilities and, understand like what it's actually like there. Can you please walk us through a little bit about how the setup is?
Sure. I mean, again, that's where, I think it's another advantage of playing in college, especially at the highest levels. You've got facilities that are like national training centers for athletes, right? And whether it's football or American football or soccer or tennis or track, I mean, you're training in facilities that are as good as the Olympic trainers have, and you're training with coaches that are that level, and you've got physios that are that level, and you've got resources behind you that are that level. So I mean, I think we've got as nice a facilities as anybody in the country. We've got indoor courts, and we don't really even need them. It doesn't get that cold here in Louisiana. It does rain a fair amount. We have a pretty rainy season, so we have great indoor facilities, great outdoor facilities. We have great gyms to work out in. We've got great coaches, and it really, college sports at the highest level, you've got facilities and resources that are like Olympic level resources.
Second to none, for sure. I mean, I've had the opportunity to visit some smaller Division I colleges in the States, and even those resources were mind blowing. I mean, imagine you guys. I mean, you guys are American football champions. I can imagine you guys' facilities definitely got a lot of money put into it. And, stuff like that, like going and watching other sports. Were you part of that? Did you go and watch the final?
I did, actually, yeah.
How was that?
Luckily for us, it was only about an hour away, and credit to our great university, our administration gave every employee a ticket, and they gave us a ride down there, and it was, something we couldn't pass up. So it was fantastic. And, an LSU football game is like an experience like I've never experienced in my life, and what a cool way to win it in our home state too. And but sports are a big deal at LSU, and it's fun to win that championship, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and so talking a little bit about when you're recruiting athletes now. Obviously, I heard your phone go off quite a few times. You must get a lot of messages coming through constantly about recruits. What sort of separates recruits from the rest when you look at them? Is it purely results, or is it a bit more than that?
Well, I mean, I would say tennis is probably a little more unique than most sports in that, results do, of course, matter, right? And you're going to have to find guys that are proven winners at the level you want to be at. And but we're recruiting athletes that are, let's say they're 16, 17, 18 years old, and you have to try to project to how they'll play when they're fully developed physically, right? So now when they're 20, 21. They've grown fully. They're as strong as they can, or at least starting to peak as an athlete. But also you have to figure out, being that tennis is an individual sport, you have to try to figure out which guys or girls would fit in well with the team. That is, a big change for a lot of tennis players, especially, and I would imagine golfers. You're still in a team here, and you have to go to practice with the same group every day. You're some days you may not do every drill you want to do. Some days you may not get as much time as you'd like, because, the coaches have to coach a whole team, right?
Yeah, totally.
We may go to a tournament that you would rather have played a different tournament, right? And, so it's, make some sacrifices. And, especially our level, of course there's some great players, but, you've got to have great character, especially nowadays. I think the demands of a student athlete today are higher than they've ever been. Our kids honestly are busier than a normal person who has a 9-to-5 job. They get up at, I don't know, 5 to 7 o'clock in the morning, and they're at the court some days at 7 in the morning. They're doing fitness super early in the morning, and then they go to class or have practice with us in the morning. And then, they have some quick lunch, and then they're back at practice in the afternoon, and then they've got some fitness, and then they may go to a tutor, and, their day may be 12, 14 hours. Right.
Yeah.
And not only that, it's very, what I don't, people don't understand that don't play sports is it's not just mentally draining. Like if I'm an accountant or if I make a phone call, it can be work, even if I do that for 8-10 hours, but it's not physical. I'm not tired really, and that's where these guys, and girls, they're physically pushing themselves every day, mentally pushing themselves with school. And it's tough. It's a very demanding thing to be a collegiate athlete at the highest level. And but I personally think if you talk to anybody that made it through and was successful, they would say, look, that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It taught me a lot about managing my time. It taught me a lot about working with other people. And then they're pretty much prepared for anything, right? For what's next, right? They understand how to deal with adversity. And they're adaptable, which I think, especially in this world today, you have to be more than anything.
Oh, look, you've completely just ticked all those boxes there for a student athlete. I mean, being a student athlete's tough. So many people think you just rock up, you wear some cool merch and rock up to practice, play the sport you love, and then go to class and do it. I mean, I went to university and I never went on a sports scholarship to America, which is what inspired me to start this company. But, doing a full degree on its own is brutal. And then being like a full-time professional, lifestyle athlete is another ball game on its own. And then you got traveling to and from. And literally, so many athletes I talk to, they say, Amrit, I've never napped before during the day of my life. They've scheduled 15 to 20-minute power naps. And it's full-time, but I guess it definitely develops character at a young age for them so they can go on the next part of their life. But you guys compete in a very good conference. How was it traveling to different venues and going to the NCAAs? How was that experience?
Well, the SEC, is one of the strongest conferences, if not the strongest conference in all sports, and tennis is no different. And, we're lucky to be in such a strong conference because you got great resources, you got great competition, you got great schools to compete against, and then you're trying to beat them all, right? Which is, it can be tough. And, we're trying to be one of the best programs in the country, and we're not quite there yet, but we've got the schedule, we've got the facilities, we've got a great group of, athletes, student athletes here. And I think we're all extremely lucky, to be at LSU. And because again, like I told you, in my opinion, playing in college is a ton of fun, right? It's a ton of fun to coach, ton of fun for the players. And, the other thing, it just goes by fast. You were just probably felt like not long ago you were in university, and now you're, now you're in the real world, and you probably miss those days when you're, even though they feel tough. That's what our, these student athletes don't understand is they, the days are tough, right? But they're also a lot of fun. And you won't experience being around that group ever again in your life unless you're in a professional sports setting. I can't, just that, for me as a player, my favorite times were just in the locker room, not even necessarily playing, just being around that group and then being at practice, and I know it would be tough. But I just remember practices and being in the locker room with that group of, my group of guys, and it's so much fun just on a day-to-day basis, competing with each other, pushing each other, messing around with each other, right? Because you don't get that when you're, if you're a lawyer or a business owner or whatever, you don't have that. You know,
Yeah.
and then you got responsibilities, right?
Yeah.
And you'll never replicate that. But you know, I personally think it's just such a special environment, very unique environment that, you know, I hope everybody gets to experience it if they have the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, like I read that every freshman that comes into your program leaves with SEC honors, which is amazing. And, you know, like you guys produce in a great amount of top recruits. You develop them to where they want to go professional. How does that stepping stone work? Do you take athletes to future events or other professional events? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, we have taken guys to professional events, but, you know, it depends on the player, right? Not all our guys have professional aspirations.
Right.
The ones that do, we need to take them to those kind of events. And as we've recruited better and better players, that's what some of them want to do. You know, and we probably aren't able to take them just as many as they like, but we do as best we can. And, you know, I think it's also just kind of, you know, just like anything else, if you want to be great in something, you've got to keep, you know, keep going up into the higher levels, see what it's like, see what you're missing, so you can go back home and work on your game or work on whatever you're trying to do, so that the next time you get there, you're more well prepared, right?
Right.
You know, we've got guys that want to do that, and so, you know, or recruits that want to do that, and so that's what we like to do. But, you know, I think college tennis at the highest level is still an extremely high level of tennis, and you play under tremendous pressure. And, you know, that in and of itself to me is just a great way to help develop you as a player and a person.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's something that when I talk to a lot of my athletes that are not particularly at the highest level at D1, some of them, you know, they're there for the more social things, but they said to me, when I walk into college, when I leave college, I'm so much more stronger in here. And, you know, like I feel like I can handle my own. I feel like I can compete more. And, you know, one of the guys that I've seen a big difference in is my good friend KP Panu, who was the #1 in Division II college tennis at Columbus State. And, you know, I saw him go into the college system. He was a very strong recruit, you know, won a lot of ITF events, won a lot of national titles in New Zealand, went to the States and did the same thing. But you just see him just slowly doing this constantly just because it's like his mentality on the court was insane. You know,
Sure.
he was developing that. And under pressure, when I was watching him play, he did really well. He didn't really break. And so that's one thing that I know that, you know, college tennis really helps a lot of recruits. Have you ever had the problem of student athletes coming there and getting homesick or any issues, or how do you deal with that?
Sure. I mean, you know, I think that's a natural, you know, occurrence at any program, right? And you try to do your best to talk about these things with your recruits ahead of time. But, you know, it's difficult for anybody, a new situation, right? And I think we're pretty patient about that with these guys. And, you know, that's where, you know, sometimes we had a player come here in January, mid-year, and, you know, he was a young guy, freshman, very talented player, but, you know, he had some growing pains because he hadn't quite gotten used to the environment, gotten used to the coaches, gotten used to the team, gotten used to the physicality of practice and matches. You know, and that's what's nice about coming in the fall is you kind of get those, you know, you get to experience things and get a feel for things a little quicker, right? But, you know, it's just like anything else. I mean, it is a big, let's say you're from New Zealand and you go to the United States, it's going to be a big change, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have a different culture here, right? Or wherever country you go to. You know, people are going to act more differently than you're used to, right? And not necessarily in a bad way, but it's just different, right? And, you know, you might be going into a classroom and the teachers teach differently than you're used to, right? And you're around a totally new group of people. So naturally that takes time, right? And I think, you know, for the most part, all coaches in college, I think, understand that, right? I mean, these are young people that are generally coming to college about 18 years old. You know, they're still trying to figure out who they are as people. And then you're putting them into a high performance environment, a new environment, might be a new country. I mean, it's a lot of change to take on in a short period of time, and that takes time to figure out.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And, I've spoken to quite a few coaches in the States, and, I often hear coaches saying they like their athletes playing closer to the baseline, moving forward, being aggressive. They don't really kind of like the clay court style of play where they sit a meter behind the baseline and grind. What's your take on that, and how do you work with your players, and what kind of style do you guys like playing?
Sure. I mean, I think, look, I think it's always nice to want to control the action, right? And I think that's what people are saying. I mean, yeah, of course, if I hit a great shot, I'm probably going to move up in the court and control the point. But, you got to play the right way. There's times where you're going to have to play defensive, right? Or you might be a defensive style tennis player.
Right.
I mean, so I mean, we don't really like coach every guy the same way. We're going to try to help you win with your strengths, right? But yeah, I mean, we all wish we had, John Isner or Andy Roddick's serve or Serena's, backhand or whatever, but most people don't, right? So you try to figure out what works for you. But then again, I do believe strongly that, under important moments, if you play your game, most of the time the person that's willing to play aggressive and put it on the line and plays to win usually wins, right? And what's cool about college tennis now is we have a no-ad scoring situation.
Yes.
And, every point's important, right? And there's no doubt in my mind the guys and girls that win those important moments, they're the ones that play aggressive, right? And that doesn't mean they necessarily are coming to the net, right? It just means they're going for their shots, right? They're playing their game. They're trying to control the action. So, I think I know that's kind of a vague answer, but I think everybody's different, man. And Leighton Hewitt wasn't necessarily, coming to the net playing aggressive, but he was an aggressive player, but different style of game than Pete Sampras, right? Or you need to play your game that makes you successful, or at least try to do that under pressure, right?
Yeah. Oh, look, again, like I said throughout the talk, I agree with you there. I mean, so many times, like even when I was coaching tennis back in the day, I hear coaches like telling every single player, like, stay close to the baseline, hit it, be aggressive. Sometimes they take bigger swings than others, and they need to take, they're getting caught out on their back foot because they can't prepare fast enough, or, that sometimes the way that their swing line is, they can't put enough shape on the ball if they've got no time. So I guess, building the player to what they have already is really important. And I guess, like a Cameron Norrie is going to be a bit different to a John Isner, isn't it?
Of course. Yeah, I mean, look, and you got to know, I think you should always try to build your strengths, right, and figure out what you're good at, right, and then keep trying to replicate that, keep trying to get better at that. Nadal, of course, is going to work on certain things, but they might be a little bit different than what Federer's doing, but they can both be really good, and as long as you're trying to work on your game and trying to improve, I mean, I think you can be successful playing different styles, right?
Awesome. And just last question, there's a lot of kids in New Zealand and Australia that I work with that are currently in, isolation. They can't leave home. They can't go to a tennis facility to train at all, otherwise they'll get a fine from the police. So what kind of things can they do if they can't touch a racket? What kind of fitness things would you recommend athletes doing? Would you recommend them doing like more plyometric training, or, will they go for a long distance run in the morning sort of thing?
Sure. Well, I mean, look, this is a unique time, and the first thing first, you try to get your mental health right. Make sure you're feeling okay, but physical activity helps you feel better, right? So yeah, I mean, if you can do some, take a run, or if you can do some push-ups, or if you can, find something to do, I think it's going to make you feel better about yourself and the situation we're all in right now. But I do think, look, this is a tough time in our sport of tennis because no one's playing tournaments around the world. And, we might be one of the last sports to get back to normalcy because we're such an international sport.
Yeah.
I want to say that the ITF has said there's definitely no tournaments at least until the middle of June, or maybe it's July.
I think it's July, yeah.
So I mean, look, you're going to have to think long-term here, right? And the most important thing is that you're in good physical condition, you're in good mental, well-being. And, but yeah, if you can work on anything you can work on now is going to give you a head start on your competition once things go back to normal. Awesome.
Hey, Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And I know a lot of kids are going to get a lot of valuable information out of this. There's some kids that are messaging me that are like, 13, 14 years old that are like, I want to go play D1 college tennis, and I love it. I love it.
I was there. That's what I wanted to do. You know, again, to me, you're not going to, especially in this day and age with players playing at a much older age, you know, if you have the opportunity, I would do it, you know, unless you're, you know, one in the world in juniors or something. And why not give it a shot for a couple of years until you've proven you're too good for this level. Right. And then go to the next step. But you know, I wouldn't trade playing college tennis for anything in the world. And I think it's a great experience for anybody.
Absolutely.
Thanks again for having me, man. It's good to see you. And I hope you guys are staying safe, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Yes, absolutely. And next time we meet, I'll be bringing you to New Zealand.
All right. Sounds good. Have a good one, man.
All right.